I utterly despise most business news. And, I'm a business professor. I have decades at this moment of understanding all of this sort of nuance of business, of engineering, and often, sociology and psychology. And I despise it because it's teaching the wrong lessons. It gets people to focus on thinking that there is fast money, that everything is about wheeling and dealing and getting this deal and that deal. It's all they focus on. And doing these things in kind of fast, quick win things or monstrous amounts of money exchanged. And really, you know what? Most of business, most of the real world is completely incongruent. It doesn't match with any of that behavior. If you're actually going to do something, it's incremental, tiny little steps. It's boring. It's tedious. Most of the time, nothing happens. In fact, I would say, 99.9999999% of the time, nothing is going to happen. And it's going to be incremental, boring, tedious steps that you're actually going to build wealth, you're going to build performance, you're going to build success, whatever it is. And, even the way that we measure things within so I study this kind of stuff, right? And even the way that we measure is completely often incorrect. I'm not saying all of it's incorrect, but a lot of it's incorrect because we sort of focus on these highlight reels, and most of life is really boring, mundane, meticulous, just really, really boring stuff, right? It's like we focus on the fact that somebody graduated, for example, right? And we measure the world, we measure success based on a degree, but what we don't see and what is not told is the years and years of grinding away at something. Maybe it's 4 or 5 years at grinding away, and that's the stuff that we should actually be measuring. In fact, if you go through any of these steps and you do anything where maybe you get it at, some degree, or maybe you get in one of these highfalutin deals, maybe you're part of $1 million transaction or whatever it is, right? You're going to realize anybody that's actually done it is going to tell you it was years and decades of work before anything actually happened. And it was meticulous, boring stuff. So what we should be really paying attention to is not necessarily the information and those moments of those highlight reels that happen, but the kind of grinding, boring stuff that is very, very tedious, that is very difficult to observe. And that is where much value is actually generated. That's why I actually don't even pay attention most times to the business news. I don't pay attention to most times to, world news. It's hard sometimes, I get it. We go through moments where there's something, you know, particularly crazy that happens. Um, whether it's in, global politics or, business or whatever, right? It's hard not to pay attention to those. But those things are not really the news, right? It's not the thing. It's not the thing that actually generates value in your life. The thing that generates value in your life is getting up and doing the same damn thing that you've done every single day, and is repeatedly doing that and doing often seemingly trying to do better than what you did yesterday. But in fact, you don't, right? Like most of the time, you don't. That's why I often am very frustrated with the sort of performance metrics that we often see, and um, the way that we measure things and the stories that we tell, that, we simply just have to set goals and then we'll accomplish the things that we achieve. That kind of mentality, the goal setting stuff, I just simply don't believe it, because it's often every day, it's meticulously boring stuff that performance doesn't increase. It's doing the boring. It's doing the things that nobody likes to do and doing it for decades, where seemingly in any given day and in any given week, any given year, nothing happens. In fact, once you get really good at something, your performance is going to likely decline, right? Like once you become the best person in your industry, you're going to be old, right? Like once you become well known and everybody, understands what you're about and all that kind of, you're going to be old. And of course your performance and it is going to decline, right? Like, yes, you get more legitimacy and, the ability to make transactions. And you can just call people up and, all that kind of sort of stuff like that. But most of it, if you look at what people actually do, your performance is declining, right? You're going to be doing more, you're going to be eating out. You're going to, you're going to be spending in less hours in the office. You're going to be doing more, hobnobbing, all those things. But the way that we measure performance is, for most people's performance is output actually kind of declining at that moment once you're in the best of the best. So I just encourage you to take a step back and realize, what is it that actually leads to performance? Right? Like what is the real true thing that leads to performance? In fact, there's not a lot, you know, I am in this area and there's not a lot that actually speaks to it within the literature. There's a little bit about within the scientific literature, there's a little bit about just kind of grinding away at stuff. But most of that still has this objective that happens, right? Like you're grinding away for a reason to get something. But in fact, it's often not. It's just working hard every day at something, not necessarily for a reason, not necessarily that you're actually going to accomplish more and get more performance and, perfect this thing. I want you to look at all of the athletes that are spectacularly good. They become world class by the time that they're 21 years old, probably go to the Olympics by the time they're 24, and then they're done. So, but what else do they do after that? Well, they grind away and their performance continues to decline, but that doesn't mean that they are no less successful and no less wonderful. It's just that, things changed and they have to measure things in a different way. And performance, physical performance, actually does decline at those moments. There's only so long that you can compete at the world level. So, what I'm saying is, you know, be careful how you think about these things. The convention of how we understand performance and what is success and what causes is just often flat out wrong. It just really is. The way that we look at the world is often flat out wrong. But in fact, how you get better, what you have to do, get up early, get going, do work, put in boring stuff, and repeat that for so long that you literally are sick of it. And you just do that day in and day out, every single day, one little day at a time. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.